Hi friends, it's Lisa Hetrick, illustrator for Gina K Designs, and I'm so grateful you could join me today. I have a really fun card project to share with you today that is inspired by the colors of fall. I've got some supplies here, but let's take a look at the inspiration. So the card on the left was something that I recently created with the Wildflowers and Weeds stamp set. And I really love that wheel, and I really just wanted to kind of create something new with this concept, but use some fall colors. So here's the look and feel of what we're going to create today. So let's take a quick look at the supplies. I've got a lot of supplies here. You could pull whatever you've got from your stash to create this card. And remember, all of the supplies will be listed below in the notes. I've got my comfort grip blocks here. Love these blocks. I've got some purple tape. I've got this powder for embossing, and I'm using the Puffy white embossing powder from Gina K Designs. I've got some sequins and embellishments. Love these. I've got two blender brushes. I just recently picked these up from my local scrapbook store. Love them. Here are all the Gina K Designs inks that I'm going to be using. Fresh asparagus, turquoise sea. Yes, that's unusual, I know. Wild dandelion, sweet mango. I've got an amalgam obsidian ink and the embossing and watermark ink. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at the stamps and the dies that I'm going to be using. I'm going to be using the new Wildflowers and Weeds stamp set that I illustrated for Gina K Designs. You can see that mine is well loved. I'm also going to be using the Happy Fall stamp set from Emily Loggins. I love this sentiment that she hand lettered. It's gratitude season. It's perfect for this card. I've got the companion die set for the Wildflowers and Weeds stamp set. We're going to be using a couple of the dies. And I have one of the master layouts dies that I'm going to be using for the layer. Okay, I'm keeping the cardstock for this project super simple. I've got some Gina K Designs heavyweight cardstock and Gina K Designs layering weight cardstock. So I have a piece cut to an A2 size card, and I also have a layer cut with that master layouts die. Again, all the supplies are going to be listed below. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, we're going to get started with stamping the wheel and doing the embossing work on the wheel. So I've got the wheel stamp from the Wildflowers and Weeds stamp set. I've got my Misty here, and I've got that layer of Gina K Designs layered white cardstock that I cut out with the master layouts die. I'm going to go ahead and just stamp this out, and I'm only stamping about 2/3 of the wheel because I want it to look like it is bleeding off the bottom of the cardstock. So I've got that embossing ink, and I just went ahead and stamped that down. Now, sometimes I'll go ahead and stamp it down twice to get a really solid impression. But this time I stamped it once. I'm using this Gina K Designs Puffy white embossing powder, which has a lot of texture in it. So I'm not super concerned about the piece having all of the elements in there. I wanted to kind of have a little bit of a distressed look. So the wheel is not going to have a super smoothie blend kind of look and feel to it. It's going to have a lot of texture to it. And you can see all that bubbly texture. It's going to make a huge difference when we go to blend the inks and do the resist technique. So I'm starting out with the wild dandelion here, and I've got one of these blender brushes. I love this. I picked this up from my local scrapbook store here in Maryland called Photo Scraps. I just love this set. It helps me keep all of my colors straight for my inks. Okay, so I'm taking the wild dandelion and I'm just blending it around the wheel, and I'm going to go up about 2/3 of the way up on the cardstock. And I'm going to be honest, I am blender ink challenged. So and because I have a heavy hand, sometimes things just get a little bit too wonky, but that's okay. That's what I really kind of enjoy about these projects, that they can just kind of have that wonky look and feel. Now here's where it's going to get a little interesting. I'm using turquoise sea, And I'm going to start blending the turquoise sea from the bottom to about midway of the wheel. And the reason why I'm using turquoise sea is because it's going to blend with the wild dandelion and give me this really, really funky green color that I really want. Kind of like a really springy, fresh green, but mixed with that wild dandelion and the other colors that we're going to be using gives me that nice kind of fall look and feel. So feel free to blend your Gina K inks. Look at the color that you can achieve. Now, you could just go in, you could separate your two colors and blend it that way if you'd like, but it's just so much fun to just and it takes a lot of pressure off to just blend the two ink colors together to create a brand new color. I just love it. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to stamping the florals and the leaves. So I'm starting out with fresh asparagus, and I've got all of the stamps that I'm using from the Wildflowers and Weeds stamp set over here on the right-hand side. I'm going to be using the leaves and the greenery and the 3 small blooms. So I've stamped these out in the fresh asparagus, and I'm just going to get everything stamped out onto this piece of Gina K Designs layering white cardstock. And then I'm going to set it up so that I can run these through my die cutter. So I'm giving some space in between each stamp so that I could either fussy cut them out or run them through my die cutter. So I've got this stamp here that is it's a piece of lavender, but I really love the way it looks in the fresh asparagus, and it just looks kind of like a weed, and it's just going to be perfect for our wheel card project. Okay, so now I'm stamping out the blooms, and I've got the 2 watercolor blooms. One is larger than the other. I stamped the first one in the wild dandelion, and then I'm going to stamp over top of it with the sweet mango and use that violet stamp and stamp right over top of it. Use the line art. Now, this stamp, I didn't design this stamp to be a 2-step stamp process, but I really like using the 2 layers because it kind of has a wonky look and feel. You get a little bit of a solid and you can see some of the paper color, so it just gives you kind of a wonky looking flower. I love wonky. Love it. Okay, so I took the second bloom and I just stamped it out with some sweet mango. And now I have all of my stamped floral elements and leaves. Now you could fussy cut these out, but I'm going to use the companion dies for the Wildflowers and Weeds stamp set. And I'm just going to line up all of the dies and use some purple tape and run it through my Platinum 6 die cutter. You can run it through any kind of die cutter that you have. I just like the Platinum 6. It's small. It takes up a little bit of space in my studio, and I just like it. It works every single time. So the dies are made to fit right around the stamp, and I'm just going to put some purple tape down on these and go ahead and run them through my die cutter. It just gives it a nice finished look. And don't get me wrong, I like the fussy cut too, but this works really, really well. Okay, so we're going to get started on assembling the card. Look at all the die cut pieces. I love how those dies just kind of finish off the edges too. It kind of curls the paper a little bit when it runs through your die cutter, and it just kind of finishes off those edges and just kind of rounds them out a little bit. I just love all these cute little dies, and they're going to make assembling the card super, super easy to do. Okay, so I'm using some of my Gina K Designs Connect glue. I love this glue because it just gives me opportunity to kind of move that layer around if I don't get it in the right spot the first time. And it's just a really nice glue to work with. So I'm just going to go ahead and adhere that to the card base. And now I'm just going to position my flowers and my leaves and greenery around that top right edge of the wheel. Now look at that color and how those two colors have mixed to give us that wonky look in that flower. It also is a really nice contrast. That little bit of white that's in that die cut is a really nice contrast with the wild dandelion that's in the background. So it doesn't end up looking like too blendy. We get a little bit of the white, we get a little bit of the green and the yellow background, that wild dandelion, and it just gives a nice contrast to all of the layers of the card. I'm just loving it. I'm loving the way this card is coming together, and I'm loving these fall colors. They're really inspiring me. Maybe a little bit early since it's just September, but hey, I'm loving it. Okay, so I'm just layering all of the leaves and the greenery around that flower. So I popped up that flower a little bit with a really small foam square, the Gina K Designs foam square. I love those because they don't add a ton of height to the card, but they allow me to get that leaves and the greenery behind it. And I'm just layering all of these pieces together to just kind of create that spray of fun fall florals there. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on and add the sentiment. So I pulled the It's Gratitude Season from Emily Logan's stamp set called Happy Fall. And I just used some Obsidian ink and I'm just stamping it right down there at the top. Alrighty, it's time to move on. Alrighty, it's time to move on and finish off the card project with some embellishments. And I'm using these crystal embellishments from Gina K Designs. I'm going to use 5 embellishments. When I'm adding glitter or embellishments to my card, I always add them in odd numbers. So I'm just going to drop down a little bit of this Gina K Designs Connect glue, and in 5 little strategic places, just kind of showcasing that little laurel wreath we've made on the wheel, and just draw some attention to the sentiment at the top. So I've got a lot of glue here. I'm just going to clean that up a little bit. And I'm going to drop those embellishments in using this jewel picker from Marvi Uchida. I am a little bit challenged when I start to add embellishments. It seems like things always get a little bit stuck for me. So I'm still in practice mode with adding a lot of height and embellishments to my cards. But it's just kind of fun to add this little bit of glitz to the card just to draw some more attention to all of the stamped elements. So let's take a final look at the card. I'm just loving the way this card came out. Look at all that texture and dimension from the puffy white embossing powder, and just adding the leaves and the greenery to the layers just made it so much fun, and it just looks so fall inspired. And if you just take a look at the original inspiration, I love this card too. It's just full of so much watercolor goodness, but just taking the same stamp set and changing up the colors, you really get a nice and different look and feel to the card. And that's what's really fun about using your stamps. You just change the colors and you can change the whole look and feel of the card. So if you haven't grabbed it yet, you can grab the free download with some Wildflowers and Weeds sketch ideas. The link is down below in the description. I hope you enjoyed today's card tutorial. I really enjoyed this time with you. Here's a final look at the Wildflowers and Weeds stamp set and companion die set. And you can find all the links to everything that I shared today down below in the description. Thanks so much for watching. Please consider sharing the joy by liking this video and subscribing to this channel. And I'm sharing more card and watercolor tutorial videos for your inspiration right here. So come on in and take a peek at my tutorials. I have a lot to share, and I'll see you next time.